The El Conservador Radio Show is sponsored by the Federation for American Immigration Reform and George Rodriguez on 9:30 a.m. The Answer. Time for the El Conservador Radio Show with George Rodriguez. George is a constitutional conservative who loves to expose fake news and liberals. And now, El Conservador, George Rodriguez.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, welcoming you back. Yes, I can't speak. On this Saturday, November the 30th, 2024, the Thanksgiving weekend. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving on Thursday. And I sure hope that you are traveling in safety if you are traveling. It's a madhouse out there. Welcome to the show, my friends. Let me tell you real quick who our guests are, because we've got a packed show as usual. We've got, well, first of all, let me thank our sponsor, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, for their kind support of our program. Without them, we would not have a program. So I really want to thank the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR. If you want to know anything about FAIR and their fight for a reasonable America First immigration policy, go to fairus.org, fairus.org. And by all means, my friends, donate whatever you can, a little bit, a lot. It is a very noteworthy program, organization, my friends. And I mean, they are at the forefront of the fight in Washington, D.C. for immigration reform or controlled immigration. So let me tell you who our guests are, and because we've got some great ones, my friends. First of all, Randy Clark, Breitbart reporter, regular contributor to our program, is going to be talking about a tragedy that occurred last week that really, really highlighted a lot of the problems with the open border and with family reunification and a lot of the other stuff that the Biden administration has incorporated into their policy. A 2-year-old girl, at least we think she is 2 years old, was found at the border alone with a note tied to her clothing, which indicated a phone number and a name. And it just was tragic that this child has come in. We don't know. Still, we don't know. Some people were saying she's Salvadoran. Some people were saying that she was Honduran, that she has traveled as far as she has alone, and so that she can be reunified with her family, so that her family can stay in the United States a little bit longer under the family reunification program. It is child abuse, my friends. It is child endangerment. And people like that should not be rewarded with any type of stay in the United States. Any time that you endanger a child, you are not worthy of anything. Okay? I'll just put it out there. So Randy Clark's going to be talking and explaining that situation. Then we have Matt Cody, president of the Oil and Gas Workers of America. You may not know this. In fact, a few people know this because, again, the mainstream media does not say anything about it. But there are cartels operating in the Texas oil fields. And these cartels, my friends, are doing everything they can to siphon off profits, to intimidate people, and to influence energy policy in the United States. Yes, the cartels. And he's going to be telling you about it. You're going to want to hear about it. This is very disturbing, my friends. Again, the mainstream media does not say anything about it. We are. Then my good friend, Ms. Sheena Rodriguez, with the Alliance for a Safe Texas Secure Border. Sheena is going to be talking to you about her efforts in the state of Texas to protect unaccompanied minors like the little girl that was trafficked into the United States last week. She has been fighting to make sure that they are, first of all, that they are located, and then they are placed in safe places, and then that they are released to people who are people that are related to them. people who we know who they are. And Sheena's going to be telling you all about that battle. Our final guest, my friends, is my good friend, Mr. Todd Bensman from the Center for Immigration Studies, and he has a dynamite idea. He is proposing a bipartisan truth commission on the border crisis. Let me repeat that. He is proposing a bipartisan truth commission on the border crisis. That means that there would be a truth commission, just like the a commission that would look at everything that happened this past 4 years and why it happened, how it happened, who's responsible, et cetera, et cetera. Because we don't want it to happen again, my friends. We do not want it to happen again. This past 4 years, in my opinion, has been so impactful on the United States. It's like the Civil War. It is. It is that bad. It's like we just went through a Vietnam War, and we're going to be going through a Vietnam War. It is so cataclysmic that we need a commission so that we can look at it, a bipartisan commission, so that it can be studied back and forth. You're going to want to hear his proposal and his ideas on this, my friends. And so, thank you again for joining us. I hope that you will tell your friends about our show, my friends, please. We need listeners. We want to inform and educate people. That is the number one issue. That is the number one reason why we exist. We want to inform and educate people about the border crisis, because the border crisis, while it may be shut down, while the inflow of people may be shut down sometime soon, I guarantee that the impact of the number of people that are here are going to have an influence on our politics, on our society, on our economics for the next 10, 20 years. These folks that are here, many of them are not going to go quietly. And we're already seeing how a lot of the politicians, how a lot of the governors, a lot of mayors are saying they are going to resist. My friends, it's going to it's liable to get very, very nasty before it gets better. So we need to inform and educate people about the problems that are created by an open border and illegal immigration. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. Let's go to our first guest, Mr. Randy Clark. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you on this Monday, November the 25th, the week of Thanksgiving. And we've got my very good friend, Mr. Randy Clark, who is he is a reporter with Breitbart in Eagle Pass, Del Rio, in that area. And I wanted to get him on because he's also a former Border Patrol agent, my friends. I wanted to get him on to talk to us about a recent situation this past weekend of a little kid from El Salvador, 2 years old, I believe she is, being smuggled, brought across the river by herself, and with her parents' address and phone number attached to her. It's absolutely insane that somebody would do that, but apparently this happens quite often. Randy, thank you for taking time to be with us. Welcome to the show.
You're welcome, George. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Tell us about this incident and why it is that there are so many kids that are sent across by themselves.
Well, this happened Sunday here in Eagle Pass in Maverick County. It's an alarming trend that we're seeing, unfolding as we speak. This has been going on for years under the Biden administration, but it is kind of foreign to this area of this part of Texas. These crossings by unaccompanied alien children were happening in the Rio Grande Valley. They were happening elsewhere. We would see a few in Eagle Pass, and now it seems like we're starting to see an influx specifically of unaccompanied alien children and also special interest aliens. So we're seeing like a group of folks that we're not accustomed to seeing coming through here. But the bottom line, to answer your question, really rolls back to what the Biden and Harris administration did on day one, which was get rid of all of those policies and practices that were implemented under the Trump administration. And one of them was removing unaccompanied children from applicability of Title 42 and remain in Mexico. So basically, if you're not a citizen of Mexico, you're unaccompanied, you don't have any parents near, you're going to get released to a sponsor in the U.S. In some cases, these generally involve children of Central American migrants. They send the children in many cases first, understanding that they can't be returned. They'll go to some home, could be in Pennsylvania, could be in North Texas, could be wherever there's a spot, could be in Florida. The parents will show up 2 or 3 weeks later, and that gives them some insulation against being removed, because they're going to do the family reunification, and they're going to find that child and say, okay, here's your child. The shocking thing about this, and based on my experience, the 32 years I worked in the Border Patrol, I've seen this unfold tens of thousands of times. What I've never seen is any prosecutions of the parents for child abandonment, child neglect, child endangerment. We've seen children die in this river here. We've seen children die in the deserts of Arizona. We've seen them die in car crashes with smugglers. These children, and I think if you've seen the imagery of the 2-year-old from Sunday, you know, these children are placed into the hands of, these are smugglers that they're handing them over to. So if you're a parent in the United States and you leave your child in the car unattended for 5 minutes at a convenience store, there's a high likelihood you may be prosecuted. If you allow your 10-year-old, 5-year-old to walk to the store alone, you may be prosecuted in some jurisdictions. But it's perfectly okay to send this child across a southern border that's known as the deadliest land border in the world by the United Nations, and you are immune from prosecution as parents. That still amazes me.
You know, this, I remember over in, I believe it was in Brackettville, in that county area over there, that there were about 4 years ago, about 4 years ago, there was 3 little girls that were found in the brush, completely lost by themselves. And there was quite a bit of outrage during that period, but doesn't seem like anything has, happened since. And these people continue to be reunified, which is outrageous to me.
Absolutely. And we know from some testimony on the Hill from HHS that there were children who were sent to places with sponsors, and one of the addresses included a strip club. We know that in one Texas address, they sent 100 children to that one address alone. So we know how many are missing. We know that there are flaws. I mean, if I were to name an address and give you an address right now, you could do a Google Maps search and figure out that's a strip club or that's an outlet mall or that's whatever. They're not even taking that amount of attention because there's so many of these children crossing the border. And to put it in perspective, my last year in the Border Patrol in 2020, 20,000 unaccompanied, slightly over that. There were 33,000 unaccompanied children were apprehended that 1 year in 2020. We have seen over 550,000 come under the Biden administration. We're right at 550,000. That's an incredible, increase. 6,000 last month alone, just in the month of October. So it's a problem that's out of hand, but it seems like we hear an outrage when there's a child's death, but then we hear nothing about it after that. Nobody's complaining. Nobody's really focusing on this to any great extent. But I'm hoping with the change in administration coming up in January, folks are going to have to start answering for what they did during these last 4 years.
It is. It's criminal. So these kids that have their parents' name and phone number taped to them, what happens to the parent that's already in the United States? I mean, you told us about the ones that send the kid ahead and then they come later. But what about the parents that are already here and then reunify the kid? Is that the same? Is that the same saga? Is that the same story with them?
Same saga, because you have to remember these children leave federal law enforcement custody in very short order. The law says they have to be taken from Border Patrol custody and CBP custody. They have to be given to the Health and Human Services. And so that office is nothing but civilian workers, right? Just like an IRS worker, just like a Social Security worker, a VA worker. They are not law enforcement. So they're charged with the placement of these children. So there's no law enforcement investigative interaction when they hand a child over to somebody. There isn't somebody there that says, why did you abandon this child? Or do you know who this child was given to? Why is this child not under your care right now? Those questions are never asked. We don't want to place these people in fear that they might get removed or they might get reported. So none of that happens. These are two separate divisions, the DHS and HHS, and there's not a whole lot of communicating once these children get placed. Hence, when we tried to do something under the previous Trump administration, they called it child separation, where we were trying actually to keep these numbers down. Yeah. Hey, if you cross with that child, we are going to prosecute you. And it just seems like it's okay to prosecute U.S. citizens for child endangerment. It is not okay to prosecute somebody.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Such a double standard. And I remember the scene of Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman from New York, going and standing by a fence and crying over the children in cages. It is just such melodrama that's phony.
Well, and we never saw it again. We never saw that again. There's no outrage when it's 500,000 children that are being abandoned at the border by their parents. But it was a sight to behold when, to discourage that, parents were being prosecuted for coming across the border under zero tolerance. And guess what? The results were we had 33,000 children in 2020 instead of 150,000 the first year of the Biden administration. So the proof is in the pudding.
It really, truly is. Randy, thank you very much for taking time and explaining this situation, because so many people don't understand exactly why it's happening. I mean, why a parent would send a child by themselves or allow somebody to bring them when they're already here. I mean, it is just, it is a loophole, an absolute loophole that they are exploiting.
Thank you, George.
You got it. Tell the people where they can follow you, buddy.
They can find all our stories and follow me at Randy Clark BBTX on X. They can go to Breitbart.com, go to our world page, and follow the Cartel Chronicles group.
You got it. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio on this beautiful Tuesday, the 19th of November, and I've got my good friend, Mr. Matt Cody, and Matt is president of the American Gas and Oil Workers Association. And I wanted to get him on because one of the things that's not being talked about very much, my friends, is the threat to the energy industry in Texas and other places, I would imagine, but the threat to the energy industry from cartels, the Mexican cartels of all things. So, Matt, thank you for taking time to be with us. Welcome to the show, my friend.
George, always good to talk with you. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so tell us, what is this threat and what's going on that we're not really focusing on?
Oil field theft has been on the rise since Joe Biden got in the White House. We know with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's open borders policies, it has enabled these transnational terrorist organizations to not only to aid in the mass invasion of America, the child sex trafficking, the human trafficking, but also to take over America's most prolific oil producing region, the Permian Basin of Texas and New Mexico. And it's going on in other basins as well. But we know that oil field theft can be tracked to drug cartels.
Wow. Now, this has been going on, you say, for a while. Is there any type of investigation or reaction or response that's been going on? Because, I mean, everything's been pretty much anti-oil and gas the past 4 years. But is there anything that they're doing to try to address it?
Yes, there is. In fact, there's an FBI oil field theft task force, which is comprised of FBI members, and then our local law enforcement agencies, sheriffs, local police. And so they have worked really trying to pinpoint where all of this is going on and track it down, and then, of course, to be able to stop it. The problem is that they just have been left underfunded, outmanned, and out-resourced. And Tony Gonzalez, the representative from Texas 23, introduced an FBI oil theft task force bill to fully fund this FBI task force and give them the manpower, the funding, the resources that they need to combat this problem.
Wow. The situation also with, like you mentioned, terrorists. I mean, one thing is the cartels stealing the oil. The terrorist, how real is the terrorist threat to blowing things up? Because they did arrest a terrorist that was planning something in Houston the other day.
Well, and that's not the only one. So if you'll remember, George, there was a terrorist in Oklahoma City who was planning another attack. And so you have talked about this, and our friend Tom Homan has talked about this a lot. No, but first of all, let me just say congratulations to Tom Homan. What an exceptional pick by President Trump to carry out these mass deportations. It is a threat, going back to your question, because we have allowed terrorists to cross our borders and to invade our country and to set up shop all over the country. We have threats within, and they're within the oil fields. Whenever we look at the war in Ukraine and Russia, we know that we hear a lot of talk about blowing up refineries. Well, why is that important? Because if you cripple a nation's oil supply and shut down their refining capacity, then you cripple a military. That's a very real threat here in America. We have talked about it for years with China buying up a bunch of the oil and gas assets and associated infrastructure. That's bad. It's also bad for drug cartels to control any part of the oil field, not only the theft, but their access to critical infrastructure.
Wow. Now, the situation that we've had with the energy industry, the green movement, how much did that impact the past 4 years on the energy industry?
A lot, because when you look at federal funding that's going to these unreliable intermittents, the wind and the solar, well, a lot of that's imported from China and Europe. And so while this federal administration that's in the White House right now has really leaned into that Green New Deal, that Green New scam, what they're doing is sending American taxpayer dollars out of the country and depriving U.S. oil producers of the capital that we need to keep operating. And so a lot of people like to point to production levels and say, oh, well, it's the most oil ever produced by any nation ever. That is true. We don't take away that fact. The other facts are this, that a lot of those were completed off of ducts, drilled and uncompleted wells. And so we've had a lot of frac crews working. But if we don't keep drilling now, we're going to have a real problem in the future. And the Biden-Harris administration has caused that. We know that rig counts are down. Of course, we know that Janet Yellen has been trotting around the world asking world banks to defund fossil fuels. And so that has left smaller producers with a lack of access to capital, which makes them more vulnerable to acquisition. And whenever we talk about oil field theft, an ExxonMobil or a Shell or Chevron or BP or whatever, if a drug cartel controlled oil tanker goes out and steals 1, 8, 10 loads of oil from them, it's a minor blip on their ledger sheet. But for the small independent producer that gets hit like that, it's a bigger problem, and it ruins their ROI.
Wow. Well, with the election of President Trump, former President Trump, now new President Trump, do you feel like things are going to be looking on the better for the oil and gas workers?
Absolutely. We're so proud to see President Trump reelected again. It is a new day. President Trump has always been concerned with American workers, and that includes American oil and gas workers. The last time I got to speak with him was in Butler, Pennsylvania on October 5th. The first time I spoke with him was Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th.
Wow.
But President, what a wild world we live in. What an honor just to get to meet him, to shake his hand, to thank him for all he's done. If you go back to his first administration, President Trump's policies really benefited not just American oil and gas workers, but every single American. So, yes, it's a bright future ahead.
Excellent. Well, we're going to let you go. Tell the folks about the organization. Tell them a little bit about where they can follow you.
Good question. And thanks for giving me the opportunity, George. Always great to talk with you. Folks, you can find us. We want you to join Oil and Gas Workers Association at ogwausa.com/join. You can also find us on X, True Social, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. Find us anywhere, and you can find all of that on our website at ogwausa.com.
You got it, buddy. There you are. Hardworking men and women, folks, that keep America running. So, Matt, thank you very much for being with us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
George, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio.
The Federation for American Immigration Reform, known as FAIR, fights to restore common-sense border controls and immigration policies that work for America and its future. America's immigration system and border controls have been decimated by Washington politicians and special interests, undermining the interests and security of the American people. FAIR mobilizes grassroots activists to make sure the voices of the American people are heard in Washington. Find out more about FAIR and what we do by going to fairus.org.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. And we've got our good friend, Miss Sheena Rodriguez, who has been working like crazy the past few years. And I wanted to get her on now that Trump has been elected to get her views about what she expects and hopes for. Sheena is president of Safe Texas Borders, and I wanted her to tell us what she's been up to with, particularly in trying to save kids that are caught up in the border crisis. Sheena, thank you very, very much for taking time to be with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on again. It's always a pleasure.
All right, so tell us, first of all, give us an update of what you've been working on. What have you been seeing at the border and in communities related to kids?
Well, as of right now, we are still, we're about to start off and kick off the next Texas legislative session in Austin. So we are still working hard on our legislation, gaining momentum for that, trying to address the numerous issues with regards to these HHS contracted facilities with these non-governmental organizations or NGOs, trying to do all that we can on the state level with regards to that. So that we're still in full force for that and looking forward to January to the new session starting there. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of meetings, a lot of traveling to Austin back and forth, gearing up for that.
What specifically are you working on, and can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so during the 88th session, Representative Stan Kitzman from the Belleville area, we worked together trying to address, the long-standing issues, right? I mean, we see what's happened with Southwest Key, the Southwest Key program, which is a Texas-based NGO. They have more facilities here in Texas than really anywhere else. And all the long-standing allegations of abuse and neglect and sexual abuse, including the repeated alleged abuse of a 5-year-old girl. Many of these allegations that the Department of Justice or the DOJ put forth was actually based in facilities that were based here in Texas. And so our legislation aims to expand the existing state codes, common sense things, right? Like background checks, fingerprints, things of that nature, that they have not been adhering to, so many of them, enforcing transparency and communication between the local and state government and these federally contracted NGOs that are temporarily housing, because the unaccompanied minors or the UACs, because we have more facilities here in Texas operating than any other state. Just like we have more unaccompanied minors that were released to sponsors, over 63,000 over the last 4 years under the Biden-Harris administration, far more than any other states. California and Florida are a distant second and third, with almost 20,000 2,000 less minors than have been received here in Texas. So these are real issues that have impacted nearly every single zip code here in the state of Texas, between the unaccompanied minors being released to very poorly vetted sponsors and these numerous HHS contracted facilities with these NGOs operating across the state.
As far as the DNA testing of families to prove them, I heard that the Trump administration is going to reinstitute that, and some people are actually in opposition to it. What the heck? I mean, I don't understand that. Can you explain that?
I can't understand it either. I mean, like, we must, there are certain things that I'm really hoping that under this Trump administration is being done, especially with regards to the unaccompanied minors. One of the first things, of course, is to get us out of the global compact of migration. That's a wide-scale thing. That's something that the last Trump administration, when Nikki Haley was ambassador, they got us out of. And I hope that they do that again under this administration. The next one, of course, is stopping the Central American Minors Program, or the CAM program, that was instituted under Obama, and President Trump in his last administration had stopped that, and of course Biden revamped it up. So I'm hoping that they'll stop that again. The other one is, of course, enforcing DNA testing. I mean, this is common sense things. We have to stop facilitating the abuse and exploitation and trafficking of children using our policies. The federal government continues to incentivize this. The situation with the unaccompanied minors, really going back since the Reagan administration, has gotten considerably worse under every single administration. And here we are at this pivotal point with the Biden-Harris administration that it's just boiled over. There's a lot of things that we need to stop. The DNA testing is common sense. Like, anyone who's against it, just like, are you comfortable then with the exploitation and abuse and trafficking of children? I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. We have to also go back to vetting these minors. You know, so much of what we talk about and so much of the heart-wrenching stories that we talk about are often with females and younger kids that are coming over in large numbers, especially under this administration. But overwhelmingly, the majority of these unaccompanied minors under the Biden-Harris administration and prior are older teen males. There's hardly any real vetting that is done, which is why you have a lot of fraudulent cases, like the older, those that turn out to not even be minors at all, right? And those that may be affiliated with gangs, like the killers that we've seen of so many devastating, heart-wrenching stories across the United States. A number of them came through the unaccompanied minors program. There has to be proper vetting. So when we think as well of, like, we need to know who's coming over the border, that includes those that are coming over in the unaccompanied minors program. And I would love to also see the same standards. If unaccompanied minors are coming over and they're from Mexico or Canada, okay, and if they are ordered to be removed, then they are quickly sent back to their homes safely and quickly brought back to Canada or Mexico, wherever they're from. But if they are from non-contiguous continuous countries, like especially those that we see coming from Central America, they're held to different standards, and they are entered into removal proceedings that can take years in some cases, and then placed temporarily to their sponsors, and then they're gone. There's so much that we need to change, and it seems like when it comes to the unaccompanied minors, in particular, for whatever unknown reason, it's a very difficult, monumentous task to try to change the things that need to be changed. I just really hope that under this new Trump administration that it's at the forefront of their priorities, because we need to get back to real vetting of the sponsors. We need to get back to vetting of these minors or these alleged minors. We need to have transparency. There needs to be more communication between these HHS contracted facilities and the federal government and the state and local governments. These are common sense things that I'm really hoping this new Trump administration will come in with ready to really change things for the better for this country, and to really stop the exploitation and abuse of children across the board using our taxpayer dollars.
The situation, again, here in Texas, how bad has it been with kids, with losing kids, with misplacing them, or whatever you have seen? How is Texas compared to the rest of the nation?
Well, that's a great question. One of the things that we had done during the ADA session, with Representative Stan Kitzman once again led the charge and sent a letter with bipartisan support asking for the launch of a state-level investigation into the allegations of trafficking of unaccompanied minors occurring in Texas. Florida had done it. They had a state grand jury. They did 7 presentations with their findings, and many of their findings originated from facilities, unsurprisingly, here in Texas. And so, I wish I could give you a definite answer as to the true ramifications of so many kids being released as sponsors, but unfortunately, Texas has really lacked, and we have fallen behind. Florida has been at the forefront of this battle. We had Congressional Senate roundtable hearing with Senator John Cornyn, Senator Chuck Grassley, and a number of others, where they had actually found hard evidence that these children, in many cases, were going into exploitative situations or trafficking situations, or were in fact not children and had gang-related ties and went on to commit horrendous crimes against Americans, and yet Texas wasn't at the table. And so it's mind-blowing to me, and I wish I could tell you, but we really do need to, we have not stepped up to the plate. I would love to see where we're going to continue being at the forefront of this just because of where we are geographically. But I really think that Texas really needs to almost create a position that is over the unaccompanied minors and the situations and all that involves, including the NGOs like the Southwest Key program that is currently being sued by the DOJ. We need to really get ahead of this. We need to push state-level legislation like the one that we are trying to champion during this next legislative session to address some of these issues. And we need to have a seat at the table. We need a seat at the table representing Texas with our federal partners and congressional members to really change things, because Texas is going to continue to be at the forefront. And it's very discouraging and disheartening that we haven't been. Why has it been Florida? Why hasn't it been Texas when we've had over 20,000 more in just the last more kids in just the last 4 years? It's mind-blowing to me, but we need to do better. We need to do more as a state.
Oh, I love it. Shino, thank you very much. We're going to let you go, but tell the folks where they can follow you and how they can support you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys can find us on social media, Alliance for a Safe Texas on Twitter or on Facebook. You can also visit our website, securetheborder.us, and you can also follow us on Substack to keep up with everything we're doing.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much, folks. We've been speaking with my good friend, Ms. Sheena Rodriguez, who is out there protecting kids, defenseless kids, my friends. Thank you very, very much, Sheena, for all the work you do, and we'll be chatting with you again soon.
Thank you.
Once again, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you on this day before Thanksgiving, Wednesday, the 27th. Welcome to the show, my friends. We've got my good buddy, Mr. Todd Bensman, with the Center for Immigration Studies. I wanted to get him in because Todd has really made a big name for himself, and we're very, very lucky to get him on. So, Todd, thank you very much for taking time to be with us, my friend.
Sure, no problem.
I want to ask you, because you wrote a very, very interesting article last week about proposing a bipartisan commission, truth commission, about the open borders that we have had for the past 4 years under Biden. Can you elaborate? Tell us a little bit about your thoughts.
Sure. Well, having been on the inside of this greatest mass migration crisis in U.S. history and I think world history, one thing that I noticed throughout these years, going down there and covering it and writing about it and writing a book about it even, is that the Biden-Harris administration throughout, along with its media sympathizers, have very systematically suppressed all information that they possibly could about what happened. That means ignoring multitudes of congressional information requests, hundreds, if not thousands, of FOIA requests, denying them, forcing them into litigation, and then, saying there's no problem down there out loud. The border is secure. You remember all that. That there's no problem. It's all a bunch of fear-mongering and lying, and there's nothing going on unusual down there at all. And, of course, now they've lost a presidential election primarily over that issue, so, the American people are not buying it. But the question as the Trump administration 2.0 comes in is, what really happened? What is all of the information that they have suppressed about where people went, who brought them in, who benefited, how the government transported them around, what was paid, how many criminal aliens could have been deported that weren't, internal orders, meetings, minute meetings, really everything about what the administration did here needs to come out, and it needs to come out in a way that is acceptable to most Americans. And that usually requires a bipartisan commission, either a congressional commission or a presidential commission, where, there are, partisans from both sides conducting the research and producing the final report. And the reason why I say this is so important is because the way it's left right now in the American public, to the American people, is that it's just one big, confusing morass of competing political narratives about what happened. And if you let that, continue, then you can't ever really fix the problem. You can't even find your way out of it. You don't know what policies to put in place. If you don't have a commonly accepted baseline of facts. And so I think that the time is really good for the government in a bipartisan way to come forward with kind of like a 9/11 commission report type thing, filling all those congressional requests for information and FOIAs and everything else, including adding material that has never been published before that maybe a commission would have the power of subpoena to obtain, so that we just can know what happened. This was a historic event with a defined beginning, a middle, and it looks like we're coming pretty quickly to an end. So it would just be those 4 years.
This is, really, really amazing because you're very accurately describing what has happened and very accurately describing what we have endured for the past 4 years. It is like a 9/11. It is like a civil war that occurred. It is literally an invasion, and, how, why, who is up in the air. We still, we have how many children that are missing even now? We have children still coming across.
And how that happened and why that happened the way it did. I mean, everybody disagrees about what that they're even missing, or that anything bad happened to them, or anything about that. That's just one
facet of it. Yeah,
it's one facet of many things. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you don't settle it, if you don't get it settled, then it will fester in American life for generations.
That's right.
A great example is, the Warren Commission from the Kennedy assassination. Had we not had a Warren Commission, the nation would still be fighting and arguing over conspiracy theories and what's true and what isn't, and on and on. It's very damaging. Another good example is the 2020 election. Half the country doesn't have confidence in such a basic thing as our election integrity, the American election integrity, because nobody ever put together a commission to actually investigate the claims, Trump's claims that the election was stolen. And so this thing just goes on and on and on, with half the country saying they're full of it and half the country saying, I don't trust the vote. And this can't be one of those. This one can't be allowed. That can't be allowed to happen, or it'll just cycle through again and again. We'll have another crisis and another crisis with nobody ever understanding why it happened.
There seems to be this attitude by the Democrats or by the liberals and leftists to just deny and deny and deny. And then whenever you want to do some type of commission or some type of fact-finding, they resist beyond belief. I mean, the whole situation with the Russia collusion was found, and just and they just swept it under, and they haven't said too much about it.
Ideally, that's why you would have Democrats involved in a truth commission on this, so that their side of the aisle ultimately would accept the basic set of facts about it. And I've gotten some blowback on that, like the Democrats can't be trusted to be part of this. But I push back on that there are plenty of Democrats that realize that they lost the White House over this.
They do.
So now is a pretty good time,
and
actually.
They're pointing the fingers at each other, definitely.
Right, but I think a lot of them understand that they lost it over this issue. Had this not been happening, had this not happened, the Democrats probably would have won. This was a catalyzing, singular event, a defined event that lost them the White House. It's in all the polls. It's universally accepted that without this, Trump probably would not have won. So they have reason to join in on something like this. They don't want to lose the White House the next time over this. Maybe that's what it is. But ultimately, I think a final report, a big, thick tome, like the 9/11 Commission report or the Warren report or the one on Iran-Contra, there have been over 100 of them, and about 40 or 50 presidential investigative commissions, I think would really help the nation deal with this issue going forward, and from a common set of facts that everybody kind of agrees on.
Incredible. I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. We need a truth commission. We need folks, we do need to get to the bottom of this. It needs to be explained. It needs to be shown who, what, where, and how this event began, like the Civil War, and it needs to be studied and it needs to be prevented. Bottom line.
Yeah, you can read my full argument at the American Mind, where I just kind of make this proposal and put it out there. And, I'm not getting great feedback from MAGA on it, but, nobody trusts each other still. But at some point, we've got to come together on these things.
Well, when I read it, the thing that I thought of, and I know that, there would be great resistance at the national level. But what about if the state of Texas had it? I mean, what if the city of San Antonio had one about the migrant center? I mean, these are situations. I mean, this thing affected us nationwide, but down to the block. It sure it's how deep this has gone. So, maybe we need smaller commissions to get it going. Gotcha. My friends, we've been speaking with my good friend, Mr. Todd Bensman from the Center for Immigration Studies. Todd, you've been doing great work. Thank you so much for being on our show, buddy.
Thank you. And also, stay connected to me, because I'm about to go to Mexico City on Monday to wander among the 50,000 immigrants that are trapped down there, wishing and pushing and trying to get to the U.S. border, but so far being held back by Mexican soldiers.
Wow. That'll be interesting. Thank you very much once again, my friends. We've been speaking with my good buddy, Mr. Todd Bensman from the Center for Immigration Studies. This is George Rodriguez in San Antonio. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Once again, my friends, thank you very much for being with us on this Saturday, the November the 30th. I want to thank our guests, Mr. Randy Clark with Breitbart, Mr. Matt Cody, President of the Oil and Gas Workers of America, Ms. Sheena Rodriguez with the Alliance for a Safe Texas Secure Border, and my good friend, Mr. Todd Bensman from the Center for Immigration Studies. I want to thank them for taking time to be on our show. I also want to thank our sponsor, FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, my friends. They have paid the bills this whole year. They have been great sponsors. We are currently still looking for a new sponsor for our program. If you are interested or know anyone who is interested, please contact the studio, the station at KLUP 930 AM radio in San Antonio. Or you can email me, contact me via social media, and we can certainly give you all the information about how to be a sponsor, a supporter of El Conservador and this show. Lots of benefits to being a sponsor. We want to thank, again, my friends, those folks who have been very, very supportive, you as listeners. We are really, really reaching a critical point in American history, my friends. I am very, very concerned about what is about to happen this coming year. There are a lot of politicians, a lot of state and city leaders who are openly in rebellion, in my opinion, who are openly defying the president's law or edict to start removing illegal aliens, and that's going to be a critical situation. So, my friends, thank you once again. You can find me at elconservador.net or anywhere on social media at El Conservador. You can listen to the show again. George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. Till next week, thank you very much.
The Federation for American Immigration Reform, known as FAIR, fights to restore common-sense border controls and immigration policies that work for America and its future. America's immigration system and border controls have been decimated by Washington politicians and special interests, undermining the interests and security of the American people. FAIR mobilizes grassroots activists to make sure the voices of the American people are heard in Washington. Find out more about FAIR and what we do by going to fairus.org.